you very much. I hope you can hear me. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, hello everyone. A special hello and personal hello to all the previous speakers with whom I have had the pleasure of collaborating through the last years as my role in Expertise France, and also to the speakers that will follow. So a very brief introduction of who is Expertise France and what are they doing here in Greece. It is a French public international technical cooperation agency. Its role is to assist, advise, and train national and local authorities in designing and implementing projects across the public sector and addressing the local needs. The projects are financed by many donors, European and of course from the French government. And I present some key numbers that I don't need to go through to understand the values of the projects and the breadth of personnel that the Expertise France is utilizing to deliver all these projects. The presence in Greece has been since 2013, but an Athens office has been established in 2015 just to make sure that there is a local support in all the digital and reform projects that have been undertaken since. The outlook of the projects that take place in the world is like that. You can see that in Europe, there is a small but significant number. You can imagine that, of course, the core of the technical support provided is in the sub-Saharan Africa and in North Africa countries that used to be colonies. But now there is a very special focus on the European continent due to the funding mechanisms and the need for structural reforms. The methodology that is being applied throughout the projects, at least the ones that are funded under the TSI and the previous SRSP, I won't go into details on this mechanism. Spiros described them quite in detail, and I think Daniele will also provide very juicy details afterwards. Actually, we are using well-established tools and methods, the transfer of know-how from European Commission and other member states, best practices that have been tried and tested in not only France, but other European countries, ensuring alignment with European and national policies and legislation. This is a core principle for delivery of the technical support. Make sure that we have stakeholder engagement, as Spiros said previously, a very crucial aspect of delivering. And of course, the flexibility to adapt to the ever-changing needs, which are inherent in the digital part of the transformation. We want to work with working groups at the heart of most of the activities we are doing. So to engage with the beneficiaries, the ones that will get the results and will be responsible for sustaining them. We, of course, want our outputs to be linked directly to other European financial instruments. The NSRF, the ESPA, the Greek ESPA is one of the major receivers, and now, of course, the RRF. And what is quite useful is the mix that we provide by mobilizing local field experts in several domains with the know-how of European counterparts. So the topic is the digital transformation and the link to the RRF and the PM². Christos described the RRF quite in detail. I don't need to replicate any of the information. All of you know that there is a pillar on digital transformation, but also digital transformation projects in several other pillars of the RRF. What is the state? How can we present the digital transformation in our country at a glance? Well, from my point of view, it started in 2016 as a first step undertaken for the organization and coordination of the digital landscape in the country, primarily in response to the European Commission's conditionality that was set for NSRF projects having to do with ICT technologies. But the breakthrough happened in 2019. Legislation was immediate, and it has consolidated all the major stakeholders of the digital ecosystem. The Ministry of Digital Governance was the coordinator. It absorbed and supervises now several, if not all, of the key stakeholders that were responsible for designing, implementing, running projects in the ICT domain, like the General Secretary of Information System, like Information Society, like IVICA. So these are now under one roof, and this legislation has set the path for achieving specific strategic objectives. You have witnessed, we all have witnessed, that digital transformations has since been at the core of government policy. It is announced in every possible venue and with highest priority. And it is mainly expressed through what we call the Digital Transformation Bible, a document that outlines an overarching strategy for the country. It contains several sub-policies, but it sets the whole context for the digital transformation. It was officially endorsed in June, but informally it has been driving all relevant activities since early 2020. This digital transformation book, the DTB as I will call it, outlines the guiding principles, the axes, and the horizontal and vertical interventions that are expected to lead the transformation of the country. And at its heart lies a portfolio of more than 400 projects. Many of them are now part of the RRP. I need to stress the fact that these projects have been gathered and decided with active participation of the line ministries, of the actual beneficiaries, well before the RRP was proposed and approved. And of course, you understand now that if the core of the strategy is a set of so many projects, we need to focus on managing these projects and hence the relationship with the methodology. So the coronavirus pandemic, together with the government's commitment to the DTB, have acted as an accelerator for the digital transformation that we are witnessing today. We can see e-services being deployed through the GovGR portal more and more. How have we, and me personally, been involved in supporting this effort? It started very simply in 2016, and it has been evolving ever since with more and more outputs and support being delivered to the ministry. So we started trying to build capacity to the very few persons that have been transferred mainly to the Ministry of Digital Governance to handle all these new digital transformation endeavors. We have been helping in the project maturation of several ICT projects, mainly large ones. We have trying to develop guidelines and templates to be used by all beneficiaries in order to ensure such homogenization in these documents to facilitate their deployment and their evaluation. We have been supporting the preparation of the National Digital Innovation Hubs that has been issued last year, and now there is a European call as a step 2. These are going to be the major innovation backbone of the country, and of course be involved in public sector innovation too. We have conducted several studies and provided a lot of recommendations on key issues such as interoperability, cybersecurity, process simplification, etc., that are inherent to driving the digital transformation, including digital skills, which is becoming more and more important. We have supported the development of the National AI Strategy, which is being prepared and would be probably public in the next few months by the ministry. And we have elaborated a tailored methodology to assess the Digital Transformation Bible. This is central to the methodology of the strategy. Evaluation, assessment, and reorganization is key and core principle, which is a very interesting idea introduced from the very beginning. And of course, we have provided specific recommendations on how to use project management methodologies for the ICT projects and how to adopt the PM² one specifically. All these have been through steady collaboration with mainly the General Secretary of Digital Governance and Simplification of Procedures, but also with other entities around the ministry and the digital ecosystem. So, where does the PM2 fit into this? Even before the Digital Transformation Bible, it has been mainly all about projects. Once the previous National Digital Strategy was published, there was a call for proposals, and hundreds of proposals have been flowing the ministry, and the ministry wasn't even then established. It was a digital secretariat for digital policy, I think. They were flooding with proposals. They were trying to see how to prioritize, how to group them, to avoid overlaps, etc., etc., because this would be the first big set of projects that will populate the newly ESPA NSRF project in 2017, 2021. At the same time, both the previous digital strategy and the Bible have recognized that a commonly approved project management methodology, which would be applied uniformly throughout the public sector, is missing. And it is a key reason for which the ICT projects under common, let's say, understanding have been not so successful as we would like them to be. And that would be an impeding factor in driving the digital transformation. We wanted to accelerate the digital transformation, hence we needed and we recommended to address this system immediately from the very first project we had with the ministry. The idea of identifying such a suitable methodology and devising a plan on how to adapt it and how to implement it in the Greek public sector was thus born in 2017. And the proposal, the initial proposal, was to approach the issue centrally under the concept of what we call the Portfolio Efficiency Framework, the PEF, and which was led by MTG, rather than trying to struggle with the push-your-luck handling of individual projects in various beneficiaries. So there were big beneficiaries that handled a lot of projects, many beneficiaries that were trying to handle 1 or 2 or 3 projects. There were the regional authorities. Rather than focusing on their individual needs, we thought, and the ministry agreed, that we needed to consolidate this and provide a portfolio efficiency framework to drive the next few years. Our support was, let's say, delivered in 3 distinct phases. The first phase was investigative. Okay, we conducted a short study on the project management landscape that there was at the time of our engagement. We reviewed some candidate methodologies, and out of this short study and deliberations, we decided and we recommended one of the most prominent ones to be the PM². We presented this recommendation to the leadership and to key officials, and we suggested that there should be an entity, not yet specifically defined, a separate organization and department, but just someone, a core role that would be responsible for undertaking the coordination of all stakeholders involved in the ICT projects and the dissemination of the findings and support of the beneficiaries. So under this methodology, the main findings of the landscape, we conducted a short survey. There wasn't too much time, and it was most of the entities that have been involved in running ICT projects the past 10 years through the previous ESPA programs. You can see in the screen some key findings. Very few project managers in the public sector had been certified on any PM methodology. 20% of them are employed by central government. 33% only are tasked with running projects exclusively. So most of them have a full-time job, and on top of that, they are burdened with running some of the projects within the organization. Some statistics that seemed interesting was that we have on average 1 project manager per 1.5 projects and 1 project manager per every 2.5 million project budget, which is an indicative index on the importance of the projects that have been handled the last few years by the government regarding information technologies. And apart from the fact that only 13 of the government follows an international project management methodology in running these projects, 65% have adopted an internal one, which is mostly derived by the infamous ZEP, the management scheme of ESPA. So even from these answers, we understood that the mindsets were a bit diverging regarding what we considered to be a good flexible, adaptable methodology to run all these projects. So there are sufficient number of PMs for future projects, but most of them were not certified, not trained, and are doing many other things besides managing the project. So what we understood was that the methodology need to be easy to understand and very easy to tailor to their needs. There are, of course, exceptions in the large organizations. We knew about them even before the study. There were few capacity building back then. I remind you that we're talking in 2017, 2018 regarding the project management training courses, even so the PM². And of course, by talking to the stakeholders, we understood that there is a very, very, very low degree of compliance to the methods and tools used. In other words, some entities applied the methodology, trained some persons in delivering and running the projects through this methodology, but as time processes, this is a bit diluted, like the ink Mr. Perfanis mentioned in the ocean. More and more people are trying to just do the basics rather than, for example, updating the issue log or contributing to the knowledge base. As a result, we discussed with the ministry and the major stakeholders on what criteria would we propose in order to define the role of PM² or whatever methodology we would suggest. And of course, these are the four major ones. It has been discussed previously also by Spiros and by Christos. The methodology must be easy to use and understand, should be easy to tailor, and it should be scalable because it would be used for projects of few thousands up to projects of several hundred millions. The cost, of course, the total cost of ownership, Nikos Kourounakis mentioned that emphatically, training costs, certification costs, documentation costs, etc., are all a part of a factor that you need to consider before applying officially a methodology. And of course, it would need to be easy to implement. So to create the artifacts, to modify the artifacts to be compliant with the ever-changing procurement law, to be able to be understood by the many different levels of officials and project managers in the public sector. These were all the criteria that we used and we agreed with to handle our short study. And of course, as you can all guess, the PM² was the winner. Major points was the governance model, that it is inherent in the methodology because it comes from a European Commission, which is again working as a public sector organization. Okay, easy tailoring. I will give you some more examples later on how easy it was to tailor some specific artifacts. It is very well customizable for ICT projects. If I'm not mistaken, it was originally envisaged to handle ICT projects. Nikos or Elias could correct me later on. It is very low cost to introduce and maintain the methodology. The book is translated in the language. There are groups working on translating artifacts, on creating tools. I will talk to you about it in a few moments. It is not complex to use. It is understandable. It is very concise. It is very lean, as Nico said. A small footprint. It has a small footprint in the public sector, but it is increasingly trendy. The reason that we are talking today, so many different stakeholders, is that since 2018 to now, the PM² methodology is being increasingly adopted in the public sector. So the decision was, let's try it. Let's go for it. The recommendations then was that we need to have the methodology fit for purpose. It might not be the best one if you compare it with criteria of science and technology, but it is the right one to address the managerial issues of the Greek project implementations that are known to everyone who is involved in the ecosystem. So it is the mindset of the methodology is very, very, very close to how we handle projects in the public sector for several years. It needs to have a central and high level of support. So it should be, if not officially, but clearly endorsed by the Ministry of Digital Governance, who is responsible for all these projects that are running in the digital transformation ecosystem. We need to go and deal with it step by step. So not a big bang, not trying to do 50, I don't know, big projects at once, or writing a ministerial decree that says everyone will start implementing by PM² tomorrow, which would fail, of course. So we need to prepare the ground for it. And we decided that, of course, it should not be in the beginning compulsory. It should be tested and see if it would be adopted by the users. This led us to phase 2, which happened at 2019, 2020. So we had selected our actions in the previous phase. Now we needed to place workers, people, champions of the methodology in key places that would promote it, would prepare the ground, and work towards achieving the deployment plan we envisaged together with the ministry. So we promoted what we call the PM², the Greek PM² hub concept, to establish the feasibility of the methodology. We established collaboration with all key stakeholders that were running the more than 80% of ICT projects in the government. We started and continued to provide trainings and certifications to personnel within the ministry, but also now to other key organizations. And this is an effort that has been done by other providers also, not only by Expertise France. Okay. And we wanted to make sure that the hub would link to existing real needs. So it would not be just a concept written in some study, but an entity, a mechanism that will support the dissemination and the implementation of the methodology. It will support the users, it will create artifacts for them, etc., etc. So with the first and major stakeholders that we envisaged originally, the Ministry of Digital Governance and their supervised organizations, other line ministries, ADEV, etc., and of course the Center for ECDA, the National Center for Education of the Public Sector Personnel. We proposed an initial deployment plan to establish a very generic governance scheme, to identify the core team, the champions, to select a pilot organization to try it, to prepare one, but it so happened to be at least 5, if I remember correctly, training courses with different or slightly different materials, organize them, and assess the pilot projects in order to provide a more detailed recommendation on how to use it. So the idea was endorsed. A lot of training courses and certification motivations have been provided to key organizations thanks to the support of DigiReform. We ensured the compatibility of the methodology with the governance model of the digital transformation book. I will talk about it in a bit. We provided training on portfolio management and agile PM², which were extremely welcome by many sectors and departments in the ministry. And of course, we found out that there is being a lot of work done outside the technical support of Expertise France, and even outside technical support per se. At the same time, the Presidential Decree 40/2020 establishes the Digital Strategy Department in the ministry, and among others, it gives them the responsibility to raise awareness and deploy best practice in ICT, mentioning PM² as an indicative example of methodology. This was a major win. This was a motivation to most of the persons involved in the first step to keep trying and keep enjoying the trainings and the efforts given to attract more persons in using and trying the methodology. A collaboration with ECDA has been established, and a pilot project that took place in General Secretariat of Information System has been concluded. So more or less, the ecosystem was aligned with the deployment plan we thought would work. And that brought us to phase 3 into 2021, meaning that, okay, we now need a very concrete approach to the hub, to propose a specific service list, the menu, okay, to create patterns in the whole chaos of the projects, to specifically tailor methods and tools, artifacts, guidelines, templates, information systems to be compatible with the methodology and the governance model, organize specific awareness activities, provide tools to the community, and establish a support network that when someone from a line ministry sees the methodology and says, okay, I want to do it, to have someone to talk to have someone to support him and guide him through the process. Okay. So it's alive. The hub is functioning, not officially, but as a concept. What we did in the beginning of 2021 is to review the current situation in the Greek public administration regarding the PM² methodology, not only in ICT project methodologies as a general. We created training and adapted documents, not only expertise France, but the whole ecosystem that has been involved in PM², with the support of PM² Alliance, who have been functioning as really a core central support for all activities here. Pilot projects have been designed and run. And of course, a set of PM² promotion initiatives has been designed and delivered through conferences, speeches, documents, etc. As you can see, the list of stakeholders has been already increased, apart from the ministries and other authorities supervised by the ministry. We have several entities now actively involved, also the academia, and of course, the newcomer, but most important player, the RRF authority. More than 200 persons have been trained in various aspects of the methodology. Several workshops have been conducted by ICDA, attended by high-level officials. These were the results of the study, of the landscape study we did in early 2021. There are specific certification schemes in place, and we have already persons that have been trained through the technical support being certified in the methodology. Thus, we have a set of champions being built within the main vehicle for the digital transformation, the ministry. Two important entities, very experienced entities in running ICT projects in the public sector, have implemented pilot projects and have adapted templates and artifacts to ensure compatibility with methodology. And the same process is also underway in the ministry. And of course, as I told you before, the methodology is being actively disseminated through seminars, conferences, and informative articles, as we are doing now. So, what would be the next steps? As I told you, the role of the ministry is crucial in consolidating results and conclusions, and it is a very active stakeholder. The service list has been proposed for the hub, and it is centered around dissemination, support of the beneficiaries for the adoption of methodology. So it's two pillars, two important pillars. Let them know what it is, let them know how it can help them, and when they are engaged, keep them there. Help them proceed, understand, and they will become the next proponents of the methodology. The responsibilities of the hub concepts include project support, coaching and consulting, training, awareness raising, facilitation of implementation through tools and techniques, and tailoring, maintenance, and update of artifacts. This is the first set of tools and responsibilities that we have envisaged and are, let's say, delivered as a recommendation output to the ministry. An idea that has been discussed is that to link the concept of the hub, we don't, of course, want, the hub is not something, a new organization, let's say. It is a consolidation of persons and processes that will work towards the goal. A very good idea that has been proposed, and it's being actively discussed with the ministry, is to link the hub to the digital innovation ecosystem, perhaps as part of their services. So the Ministry of Digital Governance has the responsibility, the strategy department, to coordinate the digital innovation hub's ecosystem. Perhaps a set of services that these will offer will be actually what we call the PM² hub. And then we had the RRF. And then, as of, I don't know, God's intervention, there was a meeting with Christos Bouras, and we discussed the requirement to help adapt the methodology for the RRF, of course, as regards the digital transformation projects of the Bible. So, do you remember the PEF? This PEFanization, or the portfolio, let's say, approach was now emerging as a major requirement. Christos presented in very much detail the layering, the portfolio layering of the RRF. So what we did with the working group is to do a thorough analysis, to map the current governance landscape of the digital transformation Bible. The Bible has a specific chapter mentioning roles and responsibilities that were created before the PM² engagement. Okay, and of course, as Christos presented before, there are similar or analog roles in the governance of the RRP. The PM² book also describes roles and responsibilities. So what we wanted to do as a first step in the DTB portfolio was to correlate these roles and responsibilities described in the various documents, taking into account the limits and the constraints of the procurement law, which are strict and you cannot, of course, deviate from them. The nomenclature of ESPA, everyone speaks Espanol here in Greece. Everyone who is involved in the ICT projects is very, very, very familiar with these concepts and processes. We needed to take into account the concept of program agreements that information society works upon, because it is a major player. It will run a huge number of IT projects in the next few years, and it is a very peculiar entity in the whole governance structure. So we chose a multi-layered approach in an effort to address these real challenges faced with implementing the ICT project. So the working group was formed: MDG, EVITE, GSIS, and Information Society, and of course, RRF, who was the, let's say, one who provided the trigger to start working on this matching. And we worked in what we call multi-layer boards. The first layer was the procurement law. Okay, this has some clear definitions. Kyrios του έργου, the project owner, αναθέτους αρχή, contracting authority, αποφαινόμενο όργανο, etc., etc. So this is the highest level that we need to respect. There are roles and responsibilities that we need to match to, of course, the governance model presented in the Bible. You can see the layer of the Bible right below. So digital transformation, coordination committee, executive network, these are entities that have been described in the law. So there will be a digital transformation coordination committee comprised of secretary generals of the government. There is a digital transformation executive network, which will be supporting and running all the portfolio. There will be digital transformation representatives in every ministry with specific roles and responsibilities. And of course, all the other roles that the project has and are described in this document. Quite a lot. The PM² layer, of course, a distinct project governance layer that has the steering committee, the solution provider, the business manager. So names and titles that perhaps are different, are treated different in the PM² and different in the Bible. When we say project owner in the Bible, or when we say project owner in the law, perhaps in the procurement law, I mean, perhaps we mean different things if you drill down in the responsibilities. And this resulted in a thanks to Nikos Kourounakis' excellent PowerPoint multi-layer design skills, into a diagram that hides a lot of complexity and many hours of collaboration, which simplifies in a very satisfactory degree the matching, the correlation of the roles, and what each one needs to be doing. This was presented to the ministry and to, of course, the RRF, and taking into account the multi-layer role that Christos described in detail, and I don't need, of course, to replicate here. This has been the result, the recommendation. This is what we presented and delivered. Hence, we have now reached a stage that we have mapping of a governance model. We have concluded all the first steps of the linking of the PM² and the Bible, and we have been proposing the next steps to be process matching, because, okay, we have the governance scheme, but we don't have the processes yet. And this will be the next step in the next TSI, which is going to be starting immediately. Last but not least, I won't take more of your time, is that another active work stream has been the creation of a tool to support all this, which is being developed by the ministry and EDITE. I won't go into details, but just sufficient to tell you that there are several modules being tailored to handle the matching of the Bible and the PM² and the RRF projects. And I think that this will conclude my presentation. I remain at your disposal for any questions. I hope I didn't tire you too much, but a lot is going on in the digital transformation landscape, and we would like everyone to follow and participate.